Hey, everybody, and welcome to our Financial Aid Wednesday series where I help families find money to pay for college. So, if paying for college is in your future, then stay tuned right here for money saving tips that you're not going to get from Google. You're not going to get it from your kid's college counselor, and certainly not going to get it from colleges themselves. In case we haven't met, my name is Roman Polnar. I'm a financial aid expert and your host for these series. And right here today is when we'll talk about avoiding a $39,000 mistake. That's exactly right. Actually, it's $39,351 mistake to be exact, because that's the average amount of debt that kids are borrowing from the government to pay for college. And this is the average, right? It doesn't include private loans that kids or their parents have to take out as well. And it's kind of crazy to think about the fact that a lot of people have just become accustomed to this. But it doesn't have to be go in debt to get a degree. That's nonsense. Well, unfortunately, a lot of families feel that getting their kids through college without debt is like equally nonsensical because they think it's just impossible. Well, the fact of the matter is, it is possible. It's not even that hard. It just requires a little bit of understanding and a little bit of planning ahead, which is why this episode is for all of you with high school freshmen, sophomores, or juniors, because all of you have one thing that parents of high school seniors don't have. You have the gift of time. It's free, it's valuable, and it's there for your taking. See, as of this morning, it is March 30th. So, as of this morning, families with high school seniors are exactly 1 month away from having to commit to just one college. And they'll be sending the deposit check to reserve their kid's seat for the first college semester in the fall. And most of these families are discovering right this moment that colleges are just not giving them enough financial aid that they were hoping to get. Well, hope is not a plan, which is why most of them are in panic mode right now, because they realize that they're having to pay more than what they have. Now, look, fair enough that some people, they've got extra money and they'll just be able to cover the difference. But most families don't. And a lot of them will end up financing their kids' college with debt. A small portion of these families right now are busy filing their financial aid appeals. They're trying to get more money from colleges, and some will succeed, but some won't. And they'll find themselves in the 11th hour grabbing for literally just any loan they can find just to make sure that their kids will have a seat in the fall. And most of those 11th hour loans are just terrible. They're toxic, they're horrible, and they should be avoided. And it happens every single spring. I get a lot of panicked emails, phone calls, and messages from parents and their kids freaking out about money, asking for help. And while we always do our best to help them, the reality is that their options are limited at that time. But your options are not limited. So let's talk about what you can do. And let's talk about what you should do with the time that you have. So, again, if paying for college is in your future and you don't want to have to pay more than you have to, and you don't want to make that $39,000 mistake of having to take on that amount of debt, let's talk about what you can do with the time that you've got. All right? There are really only three things, and they're pretty simple. Um, I'm going to put them up on the screen for you. Take out a piece of paper and write down how much you can afford. Just break it down into, say, 4 years. You might have some savings. You might have some investments. Maybe you're just planning on paying a little extra out of your income. So just figure out what amount of money can you afford. It's that simple. It's amazing how many families skip this step and they never have the money talk with themselves, with their spouse, and with their kids. It's so incredibly important to know how much do you have to work with. Doesn't mean that you have to limit your students' college choices by that amount. It just means you need to know what you can afford. So, the second thing is to figure out how much they're going to be expected to pay. Now, I have plenty of videos that you can continue scrolling down and watching, whether you're on Facebook or on YouTube. But there are a lot of videos that talk about who they are. And I'll give you just a very brief glimpse. The government and colleges are going to have you fill out financial aid forms. You're going to report your financial information, and based upon that information, they're going to calculate how much money they think you can pay for college. Now, the government has their own formula and colleges have their own formula. But at the end of the day, somebody else is going to make a decision about how much you can pay. Now, doesn't mean that you can pay that. It just means that that's what they'll expect you to pay. Your financial aid awards are going to be based on that number. I'm not going to go too far into the weeds here. The only three things I want you to do right now is number one, figure out what you can pay. Number two, estimate what they're going to expect you to pay. And then number three, and this is the key, this is the most important thing, is you got to figure out how much money will they actually give you. They, in this case, being colleges and to some extent the government. So again, I have got other training where we use a really cool website called collegedata.com where we do a lot of this research. But the reason I'm telling you about these three things is because these are the three things that I ask parents of high school seniors when they come to us in the spring every single year, pulling their hair out, freaking out, going, how the heck are we going to ever pay these college bills? Because their kids are getting acceptance letter. A couple of weeks later, they get the financial aid award letter. They open it up, they read through it, and bam, at the bottom line number is more than what they can pay. Because colleges, in most cases, don't give as much money, at least not on the first pass, as people were really hoping and expecting. Again, hope is not a plan. Like colleges don't know what you're hoping for. They have no idea. Oftentimes, people themselves or their kids at least don't know what they were hoping for. You know, they're so busy trying to get into college that they're not really taking the time for having that money talk. But it's really, really important because if you can figure out what you can afford, then you can estimate what the colleges will actually expect you to pay. And based upon that, your student can start looking at colleges that'll actually give you the kind of money that you actually need. Look, there are 4,000 colleges in this country. I promise you, no matter what your personal situation is, if you know these three simple numbers, your kids can find awesome colleges for them that will be a great financial fit for you too. I promise you. You can. They can, but you got to give them these two numbers. So let me share my screen with you really quickly, and I want to share something that I hope will be very helpful to you. Give me just a quick second. All right, it doesn't look like it wants to. It doesn't want to share. All right, well, I'm just going to do it this way. Let's just talk through this. So let's just imagine that you can pay $25,000 a year for your kid's college. Maybe some of it is saved, some of it you can pay from income, but $25,000 a year is your college budget, right? So over the 4 years, you can pay about $100,000. Now, let's say that when you estimate how much they're going to expect you to pay, it's the same $25,000. That's awesome news. You have $25,000 to spend. They're only going to expect you to pay $25,000. You're in great shape. So what this means is if you've got a high school junior, tell him or her to either, number one, look for colleges around that $25,000 price point, or if they're going to look at colleges that are more expensive, well, then just tell them to make sure that they're looking at colleges that will give them the 100% of the difference, right? So if you've got $25,000 to spend, and if colleges think that's all you should spend, all you have to do now is just look for colleges that'll give you all of the difference. Because look, some colleges these days can go upwards of $80,000 a year. Well, there are really great, really expensive schools that have a policy of meeting 100% of the demonstrated need, which is that difference between 25,000, what they expect you to pay, and the $80,000 sticker price. And there are great colleges that'll give you all that money. And you can find out in advance which colleges do that and apply to those. But unfortunately, I see a lot of families, I should rather see a lot of kids that even if they know what their sort of college budget is, but they end up applying to these expensive schools that have really, really terrible financial aid policies, and they only give maybe half of the money that you may be eligible for. What that means is you're left to pick up the difference. And if the college clearly says, look, our policy is to only meet half of your financial need, when your kid gets an acceptance letter and you say, well, we can't afford to pay this, 25,000 that we have plus an extra 20,000. We don't have the money. So you go back to the college and say, please give us more. And they'll say, well, we're sorry, but look, our policy is clearly stated. Like, you should have known this before you applied. It's like, going shopping for a car and saying, hey, kids, we're going to go buy you a car, right? We're going to look for a car with 4 doors. It's a sedan. We want it to be safe. And we want it to be roughly, I don't know, in this age, maybe in the last 5 years, right? We want a reliable car that's not going to break down on you. But if you don't specify the price point, like, what's stopping your kid from going into a Mercedes dealership versus, I don't know, a Toyota or a Honda dealership? So this same thing with college, right? You got to know in advance what these colleges are likely to give you. But here's a challenge. What if you can only pay 25,000, just like in our prior example, but they think you can pay $45,000? Again, they being the government or the colleges, right? For those of you who have been following me for a while, then you know the number that they expect you to pay is called your expected family contribution. That's your EFC. And you can model this number. Like, there's free websites where you can just go in, punch in, your financial information as of today, and it'll give you a really, really good estimate of what your future expected family contribution will be. In other words, you'll know in advance, potentially 1, 2, 3 years in advance, what colleges are actually going to expect you to pay for college. That is so immensely powerful. Because look, if you know that your budget is $25,000 a year, for example, and they think that you can pay $45,000, well, immediately you have a gap of $20,000. And if they expect you to pay $45,000 a year, just telling them that you can only pay, 25 doesn't make them automatically qualify you for more money. You'll still have to figure out a way to at least come up with 45 grand. So what do you do if that's your situation? If you've got a high school junior who's right now about to look for colleges, or maybe he or she is already looking at colleges, how do they look for the right college that's actually going to, in 6 months, or actually less than that, or more than that, I'd say 8, 9 months from now, when they get their acceptance letter, how do you make sure you're not stuck in the same place that so many senior families are stuck now? With looking at these acceptance letters and financial aid award letters, realizing there's no way they can pay for this, right? That's where the debt comes in. So what do you do if you've got a high school junior right now who's looking at colleges? You know your budget is $25,000, but you know that colleges are going to expect you to pay more. What do you tell your kid to do? Well, here's what you tell them. Number one, look for colleges that also have good merit financial aid policies. Merit financial aid has nothing to do with your family finances. It's all to do with your kid's personal profile. It could be their academic profile, could be their extracurricular profile, athletic, musical. Sometimes it has nothing to do with their accomplishments, right? It's just a discounting mechanism that some colleges use because they know that no one, or at least not many families, can afford to pay their sticker price. And they just build in a discounting mechanism called merit aid, where they'll give away thousands, in some cases, tens of thousands of dollars to really good fit students. So you only want to make sure that your student is actually well ranked for the average incoming freshman. There was a study that was done, God, it was a couple of months ago. I'm blanking on who did it. It was one of the government agencies, but if I find it, I'll put it in the comments later. But they found that um, something like 56% of all private colleges discount their tuition, and the discount was significant. It was upwards of like 50%. So if you know that colleges are going to expect you to pay more than what you have, well, then make sure to tell your kids to look at colleges that have those kind of discounting mechanisms, because that guarantees that they're going to, well, I shouldn't say guarantees. It almost guarantees that your kids are going to get that discount. And very well, an expensive college might become easily affordable. And if your student applies to 10 of those great fit colleges, chances of at least one or two of them uh, giving your student an acceptance and giving them the average amount of discount is really, really good. At least it's a lot better than if your student applies to colleges that don't have merit aid or that don't have good financial aid policies, and usually don't give out a lot of money to begin with. All right. The second thing that your student can also do, if you know that colleges will expect you to pay more than what you have, is to start looking at outside private scholarships. Now, this is not for families that will qualify or should qualify for a lot of need-based financial aid, the traditional financial aid, because any outside scholarships that your student gets will cancel out whatever financial aid they might get directly from colleges. So you just don't want to waste a lot of time and effort getting outside money if they're already more or less guaranteed to get money from colleges, because they're just going to cancel each other out. The only families that should look for outside private scholarships are those that know they don't qualify for a lot of traditional financial aid. And unfortunately, for kind of the reality of the financial aid system and how screwy it is, most middle income families just won't qualify for need-based financial aid, or at least not a meaningful amount. So look for outside scholarships. And there are other techniques, savings, tax savings, savings within your own personal finances, whether you're shifting things around or you're using your personal resources in the best way to actually pay for college, where you find a lot of savings. But those are a little bit more advanced. They're also highly, highly personalized. So I can't just give out this kind of objective advice to people watching. I don't know what your situation is. So if you want some personal help, just reach out to me. Send me an email, or just type interested in the comments below, and we'll reach out and you'll get my email, and you can reach out and ask personal question. I'm happy to answer them. Everybody that ever reaches out to us, and I just want to make this again as a public announcement, everybody gets a one-time absolutely free 15-minute consult. Any question that you might have, or maybe you just want to learn the best path for you and your family to get money for college, everybody gets extended a complimentary consultation. So if you want that, type free consult in the comments below. But beyond that, if you want some personal help, we can help you. You can do this on your own. I just gave you 3 really helpful tips. Number 1, figure out how much you have to pay for college. What's your budget? How much can you comfortably afford before you have to take on debt? Number 2, estimate what colleges and the government will actually expect you to pay. Estimate your EFC. Not hard to do. It can take less than 10 minutes. If you want, we can help you. It'll literally take 10, 15 minutes. Then, once you have these 2 numbers, 3, start looking at colleges that will actually give you the money. How much will they give you? And if you have a high expected family contribution, look for colleges with merit aid, look for outside scholarships. There's a lot of money out there, folks. There's billions of dollars every single year. I've mentioned this in one of the prior talks that over $2 billion with a B is just left every single year in the government's coffers. That's like the government, literally, every single year, they open up billions of dollars, like 36 billion. That includes loans, though. But there's also a bunch of free money, grants, scholarships. It's there, set aside in the budget of the Department of Education every single year. For the last several years, over $2 billion of free money, cash, remains unclaimed, which means the government just takes it right back, puts it back in the pot. Next year, they come out with the same amount of money between loans, grants, and work study money. They say, here it is. If you want it, come and get it. $2 billion of cash remains, again, unclaimed. Meanwhile, student debt that's financed by the same exact government, by the Department of Education, is growing year over year. Same year, when you have $2 billion of free money left in the system, there's more people coming to take more loans than in the year before. It doesn't make any sense. Except the reason this happens is because of the three things that I just mentioned. People are just not prepared because I get it, you're busy. There's a lot going on, and you might not know that there's anything for you to do until your kids actually get into college, which is when a lot of families think that that's when we start looking for financial aid. That's when we start reaching out to colleges. That's when we start researching what their financial aid policies are. It's not. The time for you to figure out all of these things is right now, when you've got a freshman, a sophomore, or a junior, because before your junior goes to select their final list of colleges, one of which they're going to fall absolutely in love with, and as Murphy's Law would have it, it's going to be the worst financial aid fit college. Almost every time, that's the case. So if you work with your student earlier on to find not only the right fit college for them, colleges that they're going to love, but make sure that those colleges are also a really good financial fit for your family, and they're going to give you the money if your student is accepted. And if you do that, I promise you, a year from now, when you're going to be sitting in the seat of the high school senior parents, you're not going to be sweating it. You're going to be happy with a smile on your face because you would have gotten all of the money that you needed. Your student would have gotten accepted to a great college. And you know that the next 4 years are going to be, at least financially, easy. And the day that your student graduates, gets their undergraduate diploma, they're done. And you're done. You won't have years of those debt repayments, and nor will they. And they can start building their life. And how cool would that be? That's what I want for you. So I hope this has been helpful. If it has, give me the thumbs up so I can keep doing this, knowing that it's helping you. Share with a friend. And if you've got any questions, drop them in the comments below. We'll continue monitoring it and we will get back to you. So again, if you want some help, say interested, we'll reply and I'll send you a link to my calendar so you can book a free call. Till the next time we talk, be well, stay healthy, and good luck. Wish you well. Talk to you soon. Thanks for watching.